Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Gautam Adani already has 37.4% of the shares of NDTV as per the news reports in the papers, and it's widely believed that it won't be long before he acquires a controlling stake in NDTV. So today we ask, what does this mean for India's most highly regarded and most highly respected English news channel? Joining me to answer that question is the former editor-in-chief and former publisher of The Hindu and one of India's most highly regarded journalists, N. Ram. Mr. Ram, Gautam Adani, according to the newspapers, has already controlled over 37.4% of NDTV, and it's widely expected that it won't be long before he has a majority stake in the channel. How do you view the prospect of Mr. Adani owning and controlling NDTV?
Karan, it is my understanding that he's either crossed the line or is very close to crossing the line, and he in effect, he already has a majority control of NDTV because of certain arrangements with companies and so on. So I think that's a done deal, if you like. On the question whether it's a good thing, no, I think it's very unfortunate that this hostile takeover has succeeded. Reading what Mr. Gautam Adani has said, in particular to the Financial Times, I read the interview which took place in their headquarters in Ahmedabad. I mean, the idea of taking it global, a global brand, and then when asked about attitude to the government, he said, of course, when they go, I mean, he said it's like, motherhood and apple pie. If they go wrong, then you pull them up, but don't be shy of, supporting them when they on development issues. And he's aligned to the development agenda of the government. That's not, I think, the role of the media.
I'll come to what he said to the Financial Times in a moment's time. But first, let me ask you why you think Mr. Adani has been so keen to acquire NDTV. There's a lot of speculation about that. Could it be because he genuinely wants to add a media arm to his empire? Or do you think he's doing this because he wants to neutralize a channel that the Modi government is clearly unhappy with? And if it is the latter, is he acting on the Prime Minister or the BJP's behalf?
I think those two motivations are aligned, are not incompatible. He wants to acquire a global brand. And in fact, in that interview, he said it's a negligible cost for the conglomerate to add this to their portfolio, if you like. Yes, I think the NDTV has really stood out in the Indian media space, in the Indian news television space, as the one channel, at least in the English language, which is independent. By independent, we mean, they don't take necessarily adversarial positions. It's not that NDTV criticizes everything, but they are not suborned by any political establishment, or let alone the present ruling party, the BJP, which I think is very intolerant towards dissent, towards criticism, and so on. And it's not just the BJP, but the whole parivar, the way they come at you, and so on. And this will end, I think, with the hostile takeover by Mr. Gautam Adani.
So you believe two things, do you? One, that he does deliberately want to expand his empire to include a media arm. And secondly, at the same time, he also wants to neutralize a channel that the Modi government is unhappy with. He wants to do both things together.
Yes. 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 And he wants to do it. He wants to do it, and we will see very soon how it is.
Okay.
But what lies in the future? Perhaps we'll come to that, because there are some very good journalists still in NDTV, and their futures are at stake, and so on. But we can come to that if you like.
Absolutely. Before we talk about their future, and it is important to talk about their future, let's consider the things that Mr. Adani has said to the Financial Times, because that interview given on the 25th of November is the only time, as far as I know, that he has publicly spoken and explained what are his intentions behind this acquisition. To begin with, he says that he believes his push into the media, which includes his intention to acquire NDTV, is a responsibility. That's the precise word he used. He says it's not a business opportunity. Do you find that stress on responsibility reassuring, or do you think it's a facade?
No, I think that's how he perhaps perceives it, responsibility. And in light of what he has said later, it makes, you can understand it. It makes sense for him, because, what he says about the role of the media to be positive towards development and so on. You don't have to say it. It happens. You don't have to. You don't have to put it on your agenda. That you can criticize, but where they go right, and he believes that most of it is right. The present rulers, what they're doing. So having said that itself dilutes the idea of independence. I think when you say that, by all means, criticize when they go wrong, but don't hold back when they do right, and particularly on development. I think it's not the role of the media, in my understanding, to promote development or any such thing. You are objective. You have to be objective, not in the sense of neutrality, but in method. The way you do it, verification. There's a method. Walter Lippmann a long time ago spoke about this, that the idea of objectivity is not that you're neutral, stand aside from issues, but you apply the scientific method to the extent you can in this area. And I think you do it very well by verifying the facts and sometimes giving the interviewee a hard time. But that's the way I think journalism has been historically construed, good, decent, independent journalism.
Let me, for the sake of the audience, quote the precise bit that you're alluding to and referring to. It was something that he said in that interview of 25th November to the Financial Times. He said, and he was talking about how he would protect the independence of NDTV. It was in response to that he said, independence means if the government has done something wrong, you say it's wrong. But at the same time, you should have the courage when the government is doing the right thing every day. You have to also say that. If I've understood your answer correctly, you're not impressed by what I call the Adani concept of independence.
Yes, that's correct. Because why say it? It goes without saying that if you agree with something they do, you maybe in an editorial or in an opinion piece, or the media take that stand, and all the time it's happened. But if you bring it front and center, then there's something which is odd about that, which is wrong about it, I think, and that causes concern, I think.
Let me pick up a little on what he actually said, because I want to put the second half of that quotation to you very specifically. He said, you should have the courage when the government is doing the right thing every day. Do governments do the right thing every day? And I'm not just talking of the Indian government, I'm talking of any government anywhere in the world. Do they do the right thing every day? Or is that itself a giveaway of his prejudice and his position?
Yeah, I think it's a giveaway of his position because no government in the world can do the right thing every day. It's conceptually, philosophically impossible for a government to do the right thing every day. Otherwise, there will be no course correction, there'll be no corruption, no other failures in foreign policy and so on. So it's impossible. So, and the word courage also is important, which implies that a whole constituency is putting pressure on you to just be adversarial. I think that's the hidden meaning. I think when you use the word courage, you should have the courage. Why should you have the courage? You do it in the normal course. If you agree with something, say demonetization, which went horribly wrong in my opinion. But how would NDTV treat it today? NDTV, not today, but tomorrow, when control is lost, when the Roys lose control, so and so on. So I think those statements, while covering some basis that you can criticize when they go wrong, that anybody would say.
Okay.
So I think that particular statement, presumably in answer to a very specific question, I think causes concern and gives away a certain position. Yes.
Let me bring up something else that Mr. Adani said to the Financial Times, and this second thing, in a sense, prima facie, looks contradictory to his concept of independence. He says he wants NDTV to have a global footprint. That's his precise phrase. And he added, I'm quoting, India does not have one single outlet to compare to the Financial Times or Al Jazeera. It's very interesting that he's quoted those two institutions, Financial Times and Al Jazeera, because they are both highly respected. And he clearly wants NDTV to have a similar standing. Now, if that is correct, doesn't it suggest two things? First, that he intends to put a lot of money into NDTV because it can't become the equivalent of Al Jazeera without a lot of funding. But secondly, and perhaps more importantly, does it suggest that he's going to protect the credibility of NDTV? Because otherwise, it could never aspire to the status of the Financial Times and Al Jazeera. And therefore, is there not a sense in which what he's saying here contradicts what he's saying about independence?
Yes, I think I fully agree with you on that. I think he will seek credibility. Otherwise, what's the point? Although there are a couple of TV channels whom I won't name in this program, which I think are adept at doing hit jobs, and they've lost credibility with a lot of viewers, whatever the ratings they claim. But I'm not going to name them. But coming to this, yes, I think he will need credibility if that objective of taking it global is to be met. Financial Times is one of the world's best newspapers. Whatever you think of this or that editorial, the way they've gone about expanding their footprint globally and on the digital space. Al Jazeera, I think, makes a big difference. Of course, Al Jazeera, you can't criticize the local and so on, with that exception. Of course, that's a huge exception, that you are independent and you are critical, but you can be critical, but you don't criticize your own rulers, which I think is not, doesn't fit into a concept of independence here. So there's a difference in that. But yes, the answer to the basic question is yes. I think they are contradictory, these goals. If you want to be very positive towards development, so-called, and then you want to take it global, well, I think even nationally you have to build credibility. It's not just because they want the objective of going global, establishing a global brand, as he puts it. I mean, why hasn't TV18, that whole group, become a global band? There's they are not short of resources for those and so on. So it is contradictory, yes.
Can I put this to you? If he is determined to take NDTV global, then it's going to cost him a lot of money to do so. It is by no means going to be cheap. No other Indian channel has attempted it, so it will be a first. Now, if he puts that sort of money to give it a global footprint, would he still undermine its independence and ruin its credibility? Because then he'd be throwing his money away.
But he has already said in the same interview, Karan, that this is a negligible cost for their conglomerate.
But wasn't he talking about the acquisition, which is roughly 400 crores? The cost of going global would be into the thousands of crores.
No, I think he's mentioned, I think it's in relation to his global ambitions, which includes the cost of acquisition, which is nothing, 100 odd crores. For a loan was over 400 crores. So he's got it at a huge discount, if you like. But he has himself said it's negligible for us. The cost is negligible. And I understand it to be the cost of taking it global, the cost of acquiring it and taking it global.
So in other words, what he would do is make NDTV global, pay the money necessary to go global, but it would still be effectively a mouthpiece for the government of the day, presumably the BJP Modi government. In other words, he would be able to say to Mr. Modi, I've given you an international voice.
Yes, it would be a showcase for India's or the BJP's development agenda, to which he has alluded several times there. Investors would appreciate it, etc. So I think that's not the role of independent journalism, to sort of take your country, to align yourself with the objectives of the country, the so-called national thing.
I couldn't agree more. It is not the job of any media, particularly a media that claims to be independent, to become a mouthpiece or a propaganda order for the government of the day. But the problem is this: if he does put in the money and succeed in making the footprint global, in other words, something that can be watched in every country, in every continent, but because it is not independent, he'll have given it global status, but it would have no viewership. Other than NRIs who are perhaps pro-Modi, no one would watch it. So what would be the point of going global, but at the same time undermining independence? Because no one will watch it, even though it's technically available to be watched.
That's the challenge this takeover will face. And you put your finger on it, the contradiction. So he'll have to balance what he does with their journalism with this objective of taking it global on behalf of the nation, if you like, within quotes. So that I don't know. Yeah, it'll be something of a dilemma to be able to do it. If it becomes if it's perceived to be propagandistic, it'll surely lose steam in his ambition. And I think it's not going to be easy to take it global. I mean, you may have the money. Al Jazeera went to the US and wound up its operations. They had huge, there's no shortage of money there. So I think it may not click in various cultures, your kind of journalism. But as you say, there will be some viewership, NRIs and so on, if you're not credible and if you don't prove to be really independent.
There's something else he said to the Financial Times that I'd like to put to you. He said that he's invited Prannoy Roy to continue as chairman of NDTV. How do you read that?
Because he wants, Prannoy Roy is an icon in news television, as is Radhika, who's sometimes forgotten in this. But so he wants the credibility of Prannoy Roy, the shine, to rub off after the takeover. But I don't think Prannoy Roy will be accepted.
I presume that there is a real danger if Prannoy Roy does accept and continues under Adani ownership as chairman of NDTV. And the danger is that he could become the acceptable front behind which the channel itself is changed beyond recognition. And yet his face and his continuation would be a sort of front to delude people, whilst the reality changes.
Yes, and it is my understanding that possibility is ruled out. Prannoy Roy will not accept any such invitation.
Now, Ravish Kumar, NDTV star Hindi anchor, has already resigned. And as you mentioned earlier, clearly people like Srinivasan Jain, Nidhi Razdan, Sanket Upadhyay, Vishnu Som, Sonia Singh, will be very carefully considering their future. What is your advice to them as one of India's most highly regarded senior journalists?
If I were them, I would wait it out to see what happens. Their future is in their hands, and I think they will be able to get other jobs if they decide to leave. But no knee-jerk reaction. I think there is a lot of demoralization among journalists in the NDTV. This is an open secret. Some of them have gone on not on record. They've spoken to the media without having their names disclosed. And there's no doubt there is a sense of demoralization. But a lot of them, they'll need to get jobs. So I think if there were an opportunity, because NDTV is still a brand in India, and it's not going to vanish overnight. So I think some of them may stay, and depending on how it is conducted, because I think it has to be given a chance, right?
That is the point you're making. Don't jump to a hasty decision. See how things pan out. Wait and see what Mr. Adani does before you decide whether you want to continue or whether you want to pack up and leave. Isn't that what you're saying to them?
Yes, that's what I'm saying to them. And there are excellent journalists. I mean, I know Vasu very well, Nidhi, and so on. I think these are people with integrity, with independence, with skill, a lot of experience. See what Srinivasan Jain got Chief Minister Gehlot to say the other day on television, which I think is a very significant interview, and so on. So I think they have real opportunities.
Can I put this to you?
They can afford. They should wait and see. Yes, this is if I were them, I'd do that.
And can I put something else to you? If Mr. Adani is serious about giving NDTV a global footprint, of raising it to the status of the Financial Times and Al Jazeera, then he will need people like Srinivasan Jain, Nidhi, Razdan, Sanket Upadhyay, Vishnu Som, Sonia Singh. Without them, his job would be considerably harder. So clearly, he would want to run a channel that retains these people. Otherwise, his hopes of making this an Indian Financial Times or an Indian Al Jazeera would literally never fructify.
Yes, it would be a pipe dream, I think, if you don't have people with talent, and it's not going to be very easy to replace these people. Also, their experience, their assurance, and so on. Their reputation also matters a great deal. If there were, for example, hypothetically, if there were an exodus of the bright ones, the well-known ones, I think it'll do a lot of damage to this asset that the Adanis have acquired.
Well, if there was an exodus, NDTV would effectively cease to exist. They'd have to bring in new, unknown, untried, inexperienced faces, and the channel would lose credibility overnight.
Yes, which is why I think he has proceeded. He's come out with these statements to the Financial Times and is proceeding carefully, if you like, on how to handle it. Because I repeat, this is a challenge. It involves the contradiction that you mentioned, and I think it is going to be a problem for the acquirer.
I want to come to two more questions, but before I do that, let me underline for the audience what you called a dilemma, what we both together called a contradiction, and the challenge that faces Mr. Adani. NDTV has a distinct character. It has a very loyal audience. It has a very high reputation. After spending hundreds of crores to acquire it, and maybe up to 1,000 crores and more to give it a global footprint, would it make sense for Mr. Adani to then change the channel in a way that damages and undermines its credibility? And that's the challenge he faces. If he's going to succeed in making it global and the equivalent of Al Jazeera, he has to maintain its credibility. But if he maintains its credibility, it will continue to be a channel that Mr. Modi is unhappy with. And if pleasing Mr. Modi is his priority, then he can't make it in Al Jazeera. And if making it in Al Jazeera is his priority, then Mr. Modi won't like the nature of the channel. That dilemma is one that he's caught bang in the middle of.
Absolutely. Well said.
Okay, let me come to the two last questions. They are not really to do with Mr. Adani, but they're to do with the NDTV story and the way in which that channel has reached this moment of denouement. To begin with, the right to acquire 29% of NDTV shares, which Mr. Adani acquired by buying Vishwa Pradhan Commercial Private Limited, that right was earlier owned by Mukesh Ambani, who held it for almost 12 years, but at no point in that 12-year period did Mukesh Ambani either encash that right, nor did he in any known way interfere with the functioning of NDTV. How much credit does Mukesh Ambani deserve for that 12-year period of pretty meticulous restraint?
Yes, I fully agree. I think he deserves, Mukesh Ambani deserves a lot of credit, because I think he wanted this independent channel to continue. I think he had respect for NDTV and the Roys. I've heard him say this, so I think he really came out as somebody to bail them out at that point when they needed the loan. If you the loan agreement has not been fully disclosed, but if you look at the SAT order, which struck down SEBI's order, the single member order, I think it's very they reproduce there the key features of this agreement, and SAT concluded that it was a commercial agreement. It was not a takeover in disguise, disguised as a loan agreement, and I think it's got both. There are benefits and compromises on both sides, but above all, the clause stares you in the face. There'll be no interference with the operations of the editorial operations of NDTV.
You began your answer, Ram, by saying that Mukesh Ambani deserves a lot of credit. Privately, he has let it be known that he respected and wanted to protect the independence of NDTV. Yes. Why then did he choose to sell Vishwa Pradhan to Adani? Would he not have known or sensed that with that sale, Adani might not continue in the same way Mukesh Ambani had, and that Adani could endanger the independence of NDTV?
It is my understanding that I think he had waited long enough for this. Had the loan been repaid, I think this would not have happened. But I think he waited long enough, and he deserves a lot of credit. I think there came a point when I think he couldn't hold on to it anymore. That's my understanding in the overall situation. Whether there was any direct pressure or not, I'm not privy to that. But I think it would have been difficult for him to continue with this, particularly as several articles have been written on it.
But you're suggesting that there might have been pressure on Ambani to agree to selling to Adani. And I presume if such pressure existed, it would have come from the government of the day, which is very close to Mr. Adani.
Yeah, that's a possibility, but that's I wouldn't want to speculate on that. But I think my understanding is that it was difficult for him to hold on to this loan agreement and let it it was a great help to NDTV, which is actually they were very unlucky because when they were in expansion mode, the global financial crisis hit them. The stock value declined or even collapsed, and they had to pay back a major loan. And he really, it was very helpful for NDTV to continue along its path. And they have now, facing all kinds of attacks from the enforcement, income tax.
Absolutely. You're completely right when you say that Mukesh Ambani stepped in at a time when the Roy's luck seemed to have run out and bailed them out by giving them a loan and never encashing the right to convert that loan into shares which he had got. However,
and interest-free. Let's not forget, it's interest-free.
Absolutely. And that's another very important thing. An interest-free loan is actually virtually money for nothing. That is the important thing about an interest-free loan. There's no cost to it. Let me put my last question to you. Prannoy Roy and Radhika Roy left the right to acquire 29% of NDTV shares with Vishwa Pradhan for 12 years, thus creating a hostage to fortune situation. Was it a mistake for the two of them, maybe even folly, to put themselves and NDTV in this position? They could afford to do it whilst Mukesh was understanding and not willing to exercise the right he had. But they had no guarantee Mukesh would continue in that way or wouldn't sell it on. So was it a mistake on their part to put themselves in this position for 12 years?
I don't think so. I think because of the unfortunate factors beyond their control hitting them, hitting their expansion plans and hitting their very existence of the NDTV. I think there was, I suppose there were some options, but this was the best option at that time to go for this loan, and I think
But could they not have paid off the loan? It's 12 years that they had the loan outstanding. Shouldn't they have taken steps to pay it off?
No, very difficult, I think, in this situation, because they were being assailed by these cases. Huge claims made by income tax and enforcement directorate putting pressure, CBI coming into the picture, and so on. All-out attack, which many of us condemned. People like me openly opposed that and condemned, saying this is a vendetta, this is a political assault, politically inspired assault, because they are independent. So I think it would have been very difficult to pay there. So it's just that I think it's all good things come to an end, and I think this continued. Perhaps they were surprised when this happened.
Because, but I think that's beautifully put, almost philosophically. All good things come to an end. And maybe there's another phrase you could have also said, sometimes one's luck runs out, and when one's luck runs out, there's not much you can do. I thank you, Mr. Ram, for joining us. I thank you also for sharing with us your information right at the very beginning, that you do now believe from information that you've got that Adani has acquired full control of NDTV. In other words, the 37.4% shareholding, which the papers claimed was what he had, has now crossed 50%. He is the majority owner of the channel. And therefore, all the fears that we've discussed and the dilemma, the challenge, the contradiction that lay at the heart of our discussion becomes an essential part of concern for Adani, but also for the audience. I thank you for opening our eyes to this. Take care.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.